Hello, this is Joel Blackford with Beth Hesed Sabbath Fellowship at 1631 Ford Parkway, St. Paul, Minnesota. We meet every Sabbath from 11:30 a.m. to sunset. We'd love to have you join us for even a minute or two some Sabbath if you're in St. Paul and you'd like to stop by and just have a great time with us. So we meet all day and you can pop in for a minute or two and just be blessed. So this video is on patterns, prophetic, historic, newsworthy patterns that are going on, and we're in the spring right now. Are we celebrating Passover or Lent? Are we clueless that Passover is what Yeshua celebrated? And why would we celebrate Lent? There are some weird connections. I'm arguing that Satan knows his time is short. Our God is one of shalom, and Satan wants this death, these riots, this mob violence that occurs at the end of days. He wants these 40 days to be a time of mob violence and death and war and pain and suffering. He wants you to be delusional and think that Lent is more important than Passover. He wants you to go down to Mardi Gras and have a raucous good time. And he doesn't want you to think that this should be a time of repentance leading up to the 10th of Nisan. Now, I'm seeing that there was a first Exodus and there will be a second, much greater Exodus occurring in the end times. So I'd like you to be aware of that. And then I'd like you to be aware that Satan knows which ones are the 40 days. He knows these 40-day time frames from the Bible. He knows what's going on with those. He realizes the false prophet is ready in Rome. He knows the beast. He knows exactly who this Antichrist is, laying in wait. He knows the pieces of the puzzle are ready to be assembled. What would you do if you were thoroughly evil and had only a few years left to spread your fame? If the Satan is preparing to feast on you, are you preparing to fight back against him? Are you prayerfully fighting back? Are you ministering to others? Are you doing anything at all? And which feast days are you keeping? Are you keeping the ones that God asked you to keep, or the ones that Satan really would love you to be aware of and busy with? Would Yeshua walk in on Ash Wednesday last week and get a sign of death on his forehead during a mass, which is a death mass? Would a devout Jewish rabbi wear ashes? I don't think so. Would Jesus celebrate life or death? Mardi Gras is death. Would Yeshua want you to have this brazen altar, or in this case, this is a golden calf? This is just out of Exodus 19. Actually, it's later than that. But this is the raucous fun that they have in New Orleans every year during this Mardi Gras parade, where they throw the beads, and you know what happens as a result of that. So this is wickedness. Would Yeshua celebrate this at all? Would he have any connection to these 40 days of Lent? Well, do I need to describe this distraction to you? This is right out of the pit of hell, and this is what Satan wants you to do, to be distracted and not thinking about God. Would Yeshua eat pig, or would he cast demons into pigs and have them run off a hill? He knew that would happen. So Fat Tuesday, would Yeshua celebrate a Fat Tuesday, and Lent for that matter too, or would he want to be clean and preparing for Passover? So Lent is the 40th day before Easter and is observed by many Christian denominations. The sign of the cross rubbed with ashes is not exclusive to Constantinian Christianity, and Constantine never had a faith statement, so keep that in mind. It is found throughout the ancient world and is used as a prominent symbol of the pagan gods. For example, the Tav, and that's what an X would look like, a paleo Tav, was inscribed on the foreheads of initiates into the mysteries of Mithras. That's a very old, wicked religion from Babylon. And it was also interesting to note that the act of simply sprinkling ashes directly on the head, which is also done on Ash Wednesday, was done in honor of the pagan Norse god Odin. So it's set up independently in Norway and Sweden as Odin-based. The placing of the ashes above the brow always occurred on Wednesday, the day named in honor of Odin. So it's that god of Odin, not the god of the Bible. So the Satan knows the times. God knows the times. Do the people know the times? These are the spring festivals. This is a nice slide by Gavin Finley, an MD from South Africa. Satan and God know that Yeshua fulfilled Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits. And then Pentecost was fulfilled by God giving his Spirit to us back 50 days after the death of the Messiah. So he resurrected on the 40th, he ascended on the 40th day. But then the 50th day was Pentecost, a celebration. And then Also in the fall now, you look on the other side of the page here and you'll see that trumpets has not been fulfilled yet. Atonement has not been fulfilled with Yom Kippur, and we're waiting to preside in booths with God, Yeshua, during Tabernacle. So those things have not occurred yet, and we're waiting for fulfillment of those. The Satan knows this, and he knows his time is short. And do we know what he knows? And all we have to do is read the Bible, and we know some of the things that he knows. These are the 40 days leading up to Nisan 10. So we start on Rosh Chodesh Adar 2, which occurred on the 7th of March in 2019. And then the end, 40 days later, would be the 10th of Nisan, when you inspect the lambs. And then on the 14th day, or on Passover, you would slaughter the lambs. So Yeshua was inspected in the temple on that 40th day. And so he would have been thinking about that because he knew what was going to happen. And I think the Satan kind of knew too at that point in time what was coming up on the 10th of Nisan. So we should be aware of that too. Now, this is in the fall. This is a standard look at the fall in terms of Elul starts out those 30 days, and then the 10th day is of Tishrei is Yom Kippur. So we know about those 40 days of repentance because every Orthodox Jew thinks about this all the time. Whereas, on the other hand, Christians really don't think about it much at all, and they should. These are God's festivals. These are festivals literally to God. And when you look at the other festivals out there, Easter is not a festival to God. And there really aren't many fall festivals other than maybe a Labor Day, but that's not a festival to God. So keep in mind, this is the fall pattern, and these patterns consistently go year after year after year. So we don't know exactly when Yeshua was tempted. It could have been in the spring, leading up to a Nisan 10, or it could have been in the Elul, leading up to Yom Kippur. But let's look at the verse. Then the Spirit led Yeshua up into the wilderness to be tempted by the adversary after Yeshua had fasted 40 days and nights. It wasn't Lent, we know that, but it could have been Passover or Yom Kippur. He was hungry. The tempter came and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, order these stones to become bread." But he answered, the Tanakh says the Tanakh means the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. And so those are the books of the Old Testament. Man does not live by bread alone, but on every word, which is like saying Moses, that comes from the mouth of Adonai. Then the adversary took him to the holy city to set him on the highest point of the temple, and he quoted Moses again. He quoted Moses Deuteronomy chapter 6 and chapter 8. And he quoted 3 different times of Moses to the adversary to defeat him. Are we aware of that as we enter into this time frame, that we should be reading from Moses, because that's how you defeat the adversary? Now, let's look at another time frame leading up to Nisan 10, Aviv 10, which would be that 40-day time frame. And as they were approaching Jerusalem, they came to probably Pagay, because that would be Hebrew. But it is the house of ripe figs, which is very, very interesting. Ripe figs are associated with the end times. And so they came to the Mount of Olives. Yeshua sent 2 disciples with these instructions. Go into the village ahead of you, and you will immediately find a donkey tethered there with its colt, and tie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, tell him the Lord needs them, and he will let them go at once. This happened in order to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. Say to the daughter of Zion, look, your king is coming to you, riding humbly on a donkey and on a colt, the offspring of a beast of burden. That's Zechariah 9:9. So he did fulfill that. That's exciting. So, the lusts of the flesh versus the lusts the desire to serve God. The rabbis believe that Adam and Eve fell during these 40 days in the fall. You will not certainly die. The serpent said to the woman, for God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food, and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. And the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. That, according to the rabbis, occurred leading up into Yom Kippur during those 40 days. But it could have happened in the spring too. We don't know exactly, but it makes sense in the fall. Either way, it's another 40-day pattern comparing the spring or the fall. And we need to find out how the calendar is marked so that we know what we're talking about. So let's go back to Exodus 12 and read. So Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, and he said, "You are to begin your calendar with this month. It will be the first month of the year for you. Speak to all the assembly of Israel and say, on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb or kid." So that's Nisan 10 or Aviv 10, depending upon what word you use. One per household, except for the household that is too small for a whole lamb or kid. Then he and his next door neighbor should share one, dividing it in proportion to the number of people eating it. Your animal must be without defect, a male in its first year. You may choose it from either sheep or the goats. You are to keep it until the 14th day of the month. That's Passover. And then the entire assembly of the community of Israel will slaughter it at dusk. That is Passover. I want to compare and contrast our readings from the Torah, because what I've been noticing lately is that the readings, these 35-year, 100-year-old readings, are relating to exactly where we are today. So Vayakel is he assembled, and normally it's doubled up with Pekudei, which is the accounting, like accounting for what's going on in the tabernacle. But I want you to show these see these patterns so that you can see this is relevant today. So Adonai said to Moses, on the first day of the first month, Nisan 1 or Aviv 1, however you state it, you are to set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. Notice this is the tabernacle, the first day of Nisan or Aviv 1. Take the anointing oil, anoint the tabernacle, everything in it, consecrate it with all its furnishings. They will be holy. Anoint the altar for burnt offerings with all its utensils. Consecrate the altar. Then the altar will be especially holy. Anoint the basin and its base and consecrate it. Wonderful. So he's saying, when you're dealing with the tabernacle, that's an Aviv 1, Nisan 1 time frame. Good. Tabernacle matches up with that. And then continuing on, then bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance of the tent of meeting and wash them with water. What water? We'll talk about that later. Put the holy garments on Aaron and anoint him and consecrate him so that he can serve me in the office of Cohen. Bring his sons, put tunics on them, and anoint them as you anointed their father so that they can serve me in the office of Cohen. Their anointing will signify that the office of Cohen is theirs throughout all their generations. Now, something's missing, so let's finish out Exodus 40 and I'll get to that. On the first day of the first month, so we once again proved the tabernacle matches with Nisan Aviv, okay? Of the second year, the tabernacle was set up. Moses erected the tabernacle. The rabbis say that he actually did it himself. Put its sockets in place, put up its planks, and put its crossbars and set up its posts. He spread the tent over the tabernacle and put the covering of the tent above it, as Adonai had ordered Moses. Moses was unable to enter the tent because it was holy, because the cloud remained on it, and the glory of Adonai filled the tabernacle. So this is two citations from the Torah that state that you should connect the tabernacle setting up and dedication to the first month of Nisan, Aviv 1. So keep that in mind. It is the second year, but it doesn't matter. It connects to the spring with the tabernacle. Just watch that pattern as we move forward here. Okay, and now we're going to move on to Nisan 2, because this is critical. I mentioned this water, the sprinkling. Where is that? What's going on with that? Well, you need a red heifer for that to occur. So Adonai said to Moses and Aaron, this is the regulation from the Torah, which Adonai has commanded. Tell the people of Israel to bring a young red female cow. That's a parah adamah, without fault or defect, and which has never borne a yoke. You are to give it to Eleazar the Cohen, and it is to be brought outside the camp and slaughtered in front of him. Eleazar the Cohen is to take some of its blood with his finger and sprinkle the blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times. The heifer is to be burned to ashes before his eyes. Its skin, meat, blood, and dung is to be burned to ashes. That's Numbers 19. This is day 2. So do you see the spread from that was Exodus? Now we're running all the way to Numbers 19, and we're doing the second day. That means there's something going on with the Torah where it's not exactly linear. It's not chronological that way. So, according to the rabbis, contamination and purification, the subjects of this chapter in Numbers 19, seem to have no sequential or chronological relationship to the chapters before or after them. As to when the laws of the red cow were given, there are 2 traditions. The first is that the laws were initially given to the Jews in Marah shortly after they left Egypt, but the people were not yet commanded to carry them out. So you can see Rashi and Rambam have a comment on that. On the first of Nisan, the day the tabernacle, so once again connecting Nisan and the tabernacle, was inaugurated, they were given again the form of a commandment, and the very next day, on the second of Nisan, Aviv 1, Aviv 2 now in this case, and Nisan 2, Moses oversaw the burning of the first red cow. Accordingly, the placement of the chapter after the events that took place long after the second of Nisan would seem to be an example of the principle that the order of the chapters in the Torah is not necessarily chronological. Rambam, however, contends that there is a logical connection between the laws of the red cow and the previous chapter. The laws of the tabernacle and Kohanim, which began in Leviticus, were concluded in the last chapter with the list of priestly gifts. Thus, the laws of the red cow belong here, for knowledge of the way to remove corpse contamination was necessary for the priestly and Levitical responsibility of preventing contaminated people from entering the tabernacle. So just keep in mind that these things carried all the way through to Yeshua, because Mary brought in two doves in Luke 2 and Simeon met with her, and the prophetess Anna met with her, and Joseph, as she was sacrificing these doves. And you could say she birthed the Messiah. She didn't need to bring a sacrifice. Yes, she did. She had to bring a sacrifice. That was commanded by the Torah. Otherwise, Yeshua wouldn't have. He would have been remained. Well, she would have remained contaminated, and she couldn't have been ritually able to do temple activities, and it would have affected Yeshua too. It wouldn't have been a sin for him, but it would have been a sin for his mother. Okay, anyone who touches a corpse, no matter whose dead body it is, will be unclean for 7 days. He must purify himself with these ashes on the 3rd and 7th days. Then he will be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the 3rd and 7th days, he will not be clean. Anyone who touches a corpse, no matter whose dead body it is, then does not purify himself or herself, has defiled the tabernacle of Adonai. That person, or the temple for that matter too, that person will be cut off from Israel, because the water of purification was not sprinkled on him. He will be unclean, ritually impure, and his uncleanness is still upon him. Now, I want to mention that I've been around a long time watching these activities, and I've seen a red heifer born in 2011, 2013, 2014, 2018. I've seen so many of them be disqualified. One white hair and they're out of the mix. So this happens time and time again. So we know now that there are many that are disqualified, but are there any that could qualify? And then there have been some weird cows too with 7s on their heads. That's also very interesting. It relates to Daniel 9:24 through 27. So it's just interesting to see these cows being born, and then they're disqualified or they're meaningless. These cows popped up, I think, in 2015. But now, according to Breaking Israel News, we have 2 new red heifer candidates, and they were born. And typically in the past, in those other years, I knew when they were born, and I generally knew where they were born. This time, I don't know either about either. So that's very interesting. So let's read down in the bottom here. Ariel told Breaking Israel News that there were 2 calves that potentially could be used for the preparation of the ashes. They're currently being raised in an undisclosed location under special conditions. Care must be taken that they are not scarred or blemished, and they must remain separated from bulls. So this is very interesting. And I did ask the author of this article specifically if I could find out where and when and things like that. And he said, no, 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 no. Now, in the past, they didn't care. This time they care. They're not talking about it. So keep in mind that if we were going to have a tabernacle or a temple being built, we have ashes to sprinkle on people to get rid of, they call it tuma, to the corpse contamination, so that people could start to serve in a temple or tabernacle. Interesting. Now, I'm not sure that either one of these calves will work, but you never know. So I want you to see the link, this Messianic link between the consecration patterns. If you observe a dedication in the spring, a few weeks before Passover, expect to see a tabernacle on the Temple Mount. If you observe, and that might just be as simple as a tent, if you observe a dedication in the fall on Rosh Hashanah, a few weeks before Sukkot, expect to see another temple being built on the Temple Mount. Expect 2 witnesses. These are the some ones from this red heifer sacrifice situation where we don't know who these 2 people were. They would be the 2 witnesses, and they are called figuratively Yakin, to be established in Boaz's strength. Now, we would know them, I believe, as Moses and Eliyahu, but their nicknames, we'll call it, would be to be established in strength. These things could occur in any year, could be this year, could be next year, could be 20 years from now, I don't know. But just watch for a fall pattern or a spring pattern. Just notice it. Temple, tabernacle. Tabernacle spring, temple fall in consecration and dedication, and red heifers. Then Shlomo assembled all the leaders of Israel, all the heads of tribes, and the chiefs of the paternal clans of the people of Israel to King Shlomo in Jerusalem to bring the ark for the covenant of Adonai out of the city of David, also known as Zion. All the men of Israel assembled before King Shlomo at the festival in the month of Etanim, the 7th month, that's Tishri, that's in the fall. And that is tied now once to the temple. Okay, do you see that pattern? All the leaders of Israel came, the Kohanim took the ark and brought up the ark of Adonai, the tent of the meeting. That had already been built and was kept up in Shiloh, but they brought that up too. And all the holy utensils that were in it, in the tent, and all the Kohanim and Leviim brought them up. Continuing on, this is another example relating the fall to the temple. In the 7th month, that's Tishri, that's fall, arrived. After the people of Israel had settled in the towns, the people gathered with one accord in Jerusalem. Then Yeshua, interesting name, the son of Azadik, with his fellow Kohanim, and Zerubbabel, that son of, or seed of Babylon, the son of Shealtiel, and his kinsmen, organized rebuilding the altar of God in Israel, so that they could offer burnt offerings on it, as it is written in the Torah of Moses, the man of God. They set up the altar and its former basis. Despite feeling threatened by the peoples of the surrounding countries, they offered it on burnt offerings to Adonai, the morning and evening burnt offerings. So we'll continue on with Ezra. They observed the festival of Sukkot. That's the fall. So connects, one more verse connects the fall of Sukkot, say in Rosh Hashanah, to the temple and rebuilding and the consecration of it, offering daily the number of burnt offerings prescribed for each day, and afterwards regular burnt offering, the offerings for Rosh Chodesh, so you see it there listed, and those of the designated times set apart for God, as well as those of everyone who volunteered a voluntary offering to Adonai from the first day of the 7th month in the fall. They began offering burnt offerings to Adonai, even though the foundation of Adonai's temple had not been laid. So once again, spring, that's the tabernacle. Fall, two examples now of the fall relating to temple and consecration. Now, I want to give you times, just so you're aware of things, in a linear fashion. I think we've gone through Seal 1, Seal 2, Seal 3, and we are approaching Seal 4. We've seen signs of Seal 5, which is ritual sacrifice of people, where they're bound and slit. And then Seal 6 is more cosmological, earthquakes and asteroids. So Seal 1 would have broken out after Moshe Dayan returned the Temple Mount to the Jordanian Waqf, and that was about 50 years ago, and so that kicked off the end times. And so you've seen horrific things as the West has tried to destroy itself over the last 50 years. Then the second seal would be East, and that's George Bush and Cheney and those guys, all the warmongers, the neocons we'll call them, that exported war into the oil-producing countries so that they could just take over the oil production and make money because they're oilmen. And they really don't care about our lives or anything like that. That happened probably around 9/11 through 2003 as the oil wars began. Then the third seal was prophesied and happened. That's based on Jeroboam's false Sukkot, which happened during the fall of 2012. And according to the prophecy, you would have snow in the broom before the end of October, but after the true Sukkot. And it did. The prophecy matched exactly with 1 Kings 12. And he also stated that around Av 9 of 2012, the third seal opened up, which would bring horrific famines and droughts in the northern climes, affecting food prices. The fourth seal we're waiting for, that would begin someplace south, and that would kill 1.8 billion people. We're waiting for that, and through war, famine, plagues, and therion, which would be like bacteriological warfare. The fifth is martyrdom of believers. The sixth is cosmic and natural disasters. We're waiting for those to occur. According to Sadhu Sundar Severage from India, we should be looking at the time being months, not years, when the two witnesses will arrive, and they will release an anointing. What should you expect to see going forward? You will experience dramatic cosmological and societal changes before Jesus returns. You will experience much more persecution and tribulations before he returns. More wars will break out before he returns. You will experience a restarted sacrificial system before Jesus returns. You will experience forced conformity to a mark of the beast before he returns. Will you accept the mark? Please don't. Please, please, please don't. Don't listen to those leaders, those church leaders that are telling you, oh, you can take the mark of the beast because you can't lose your salvation and because you'll be raptured out beforehand. No, don't take the mark. Don't take it, and don't believe them on their dogma. Don't believe dogma in general. And then you will also see a red heifer, like we mentioned here, I believe sacrificed in the spring, and a dedication in either the spring or the fall. So I want to show you what's going on right now as we enter into these 40 days prior to Nisan 10, the inspection of Yeshua and the Lamb, and you will see earthquakes are off the Richter scale. I can't believe I said that. And so look at the 10th here and look at the 11th. All of these earthquakes. These are 5.0s or greater. And normal days you'll have one or two and not much activity. And keep in mind on the 11th and 12th of March, you should see more activity than even this because we're going to be hit by a CME, a coronal mass ejection, and you'll see a wave of energy from the sun come at us and cause even more than this. So things are picking up during this time frame. I'm not saying that Yeshua is returning in 7 years, but I am saying that things are picking up. And also, Trump has landed his missiles in Israel, and now more men in Israel, and they're preparing for a war with Iran. So this is breaking Israel news. During these 40 days, Trump is building up troops in Israel for a war, potential war. And Deb Kafile is really the source for this. So just keep that in mind. We're quite aware that there could be a war at any point in time during these 40 days. So don't lust for Lent and Easter. Prepare for the festivals of God. Do not love the world, which is Mardi Gras, Lent, Easter, or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, like Eve and Adam, and the pride of life comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever. That's the end of this. I hope that I've gotten you to see the connection between these 40 days leading up to Passover and the 40 days in the fall, and how they would connect to either the tabernacle or the temple and the sacrificial system, and how things are just happening right now. So just be aware of them as things happen in your world, and be respectful of what God wants you to do in your life. So be prayerful. Good night.